Welcome to the CEO Shift with your host, Shawndel Spader, owner and CEO of Spader Group. In this series, you'll hear fast, focused conversations with business leaders and experts who've made the real shift it takes to scale past the plateau. Each episode delivers high-impact insights designed to help you cut through the noise, make smarter decisions, and lead with clarity.
Hello and welcome to the CEO Shift. I bring to you today a conversation that I'm looking forward to having here with Marc Robertz-Schwartz. He is a multi-award-winning media and marketing executive and entrepreneur, author, and speaker. He has helped dozens of best-in-class businesses and organizations build their brand through traditional and digital marketing strategies. Marc is also the author of The Red Apple's Way, which was released by Indie Books International in January of 2026. It's a candid and entertaining story of how 9 core values turned a company founded on fear and desperation into one of passion and purpose. Thank you for being here with us today, Marc.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course, of course. I am looking forward to diving in. Of course, we were fortunate enough to have just met here in the last few months and spent some time together with the folks from Indie Books down in San Diego at an event. And I appreciated the conversations that we were able to have there. And I just look forward to learning more about your zone of genius, your area of expertise, all of the things that you have to share with our audience today. So what would you like to focus on for today's conversation?
Well, first of all, zone of genius. That's pretty intimidating right there. I don't know that I've ever heard that phrase, and I don't know that I can live up to it.
Oh, I think you can.
Thank you again for having me. And
Of course.
we're in an interesting time. We're in a time where people are out of work, people are looking for work. Technology is playing a greater role in the workplace than ever before. The number of people that are being laid off and replaced with technology is on the rise. And it's just sort of an interesting time. And I think that was one of the things that served as an inspiration for the book, The Red Apple's Way, which is based on the 9 core values that spell out the acronym Red Apples, which really served as the foundation for our multimedia marketing agency, Red Apples Media, leading up to the time that I sold it at the end of 2024. And, coming out of that experience, 15 years, that started off as an accidental entrepreneur, never intended to get into it. Never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, never thought of myself as a sales type person.
Right.
And then thought, I think that there are some lessons learned that I really want to see if I can help other entrepreneurs, small business owners, people who are trying to manage people. And that's really where the genesis of the concept of the book came from.
That's awesome. Um, I I love the idea of diving into that specific set of core values, right? Like kind of I don't know if we call it that true north, but being able to kind of follow through. So as a little bit more, I don't want you to give any away secrets. We want people to read the book and, do all of those things. But are you able to share what the Red Apples acronym is?
Are you going to put me through the paces?
Well, I mean, maybe not. Maybe that's all, you got to get the book to find out. That's fine too.
No, there is so there are 9 of them. And I'll kind of answer your question in a little bit of a cryptic way. And,
Okay,
and I'm
that's
and
fair.
I'm not being dodgy, and I am happy to kind of get into a couple of them as well.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's important about the book and the approach to the concept of core values is really understanding the distinction of the word core. And that's really where I spend a lot of time when I'm doing some consulting, when I'm doing speaking. I lead off with getting people to understand what a core value is. And I kind of make the joke, we all think that we're law-abiding citizens. That's maybe one of our values, but we have all driven 75 miles an hour in a 60-mile-an-hour zone. So,
I
so
mean,
can we truly call ourselves law-abiding citizens as a core value? The core values are the ones that define us, not only to ourselves, but they define us to everybody around us. That when people think of you, Shawndel, the people that get to know you over a period of time, they can describe who you are, how you run your business, how you treat your people, because of the values that you have instilled both individually and as the
mhm.
owner of your own company. And I think that's one of the most important distinctions about where the conversation about core values starts, is understanding what a core value is. A lot of businesses, they'll jump on Canva and they'll create a logo and they'll come up with a slogan and they're off and running. And
Yeah.
sometimes they may even dabble into the notion and the exercise of mission and vision, which are important. But I think the step that they miss is first taking the foundation of defining what the core is. Who are we as an
Mm.
organization? What do we want to be? And those core values then serve as the North Star, a phrase you used earlier, to
Yeah.
help us make every decision that we have to make. Who do we hire? How do we approach business? Who do we do business with? Who are the strategic partners that we align with? I had an agency, so I relied on printers. I relied on other medias as
Yeah.
representatives of my clients, but they had to live up to the same values that we did. I could never
Yeah.
throw another rep under the bus because, well, they don't really work for us, so I can't really account for the fact that we haven't heard from him in 4 years or 4 months rather, or 4 days, or whatever the case
Hmm.
may be. So it really served as our foundation for a lot of the decisions that we made. And the most important time that those core values come into play is when your values are being challenged. And it could
Mm.
be anything from COVID. COVID was a huge challenge to a lot of small
Yeah.
businesses, and some didn't make it through, and for a lot of reasons. And maybe they learned from that and relaunched something else afterwards. But I think
Yeah.
the ones that were solid, they had solid financials, they had solid business plans, they had solid people working for them. I pledge to my people, if you're willing to sort of bend a little bit from maybe the job description that you were hired for and the roles that you had been playing prior to COVID, we can get
Yeah.
through this and you will not lose a dime of compensation along the way. But you have to be flexible because I've got some ideas and we have to be able to pivot. So using those core values as a way to really define how you're going to operate as an organization is really what the basis of the concept is.
Yeah. So I love that you use the word pivot. I learned the pivoting concept. Gosh, it's probably been 10 years ago now. So I was a couple of years into my business. We'll be 12 in June. And that pivoting, it's not changing, it's not redirecting, it's not, starting over, it's not failing, it's not crushing it. It's literally pivoting. It's taking
Right,
everything that you've learned, everything that didn't go well, everything that did go well, and putting it together to say, okay, what's our new direction or our
right.
updated, our improved, our, pick those words. But
Sure.
pivoting is so critical because for us, in accounting, we're very black and white. The numbers are, 2 plus 2 is always 4. There's no question mark there, right? It's not, there's no gray area. There's no like,
Right,
is it really that or isn't it? Or could it be something different? Does it just show up like that? Is it real? Like, yes, 2 plus 2 is
right,
4.
right.
And in a business that is so this or that, I think wrapping our heads around pivoting, it was a bit of a mind shift, right? It
Sure.
was one of those opportunities to say, oh, okay, yes, 2 plus 2 can still be 4, and we can pivot in this way to help us improve, show up better for our clients, show up better for our team, show up better as the owner, show up better,
Right,
pick one.
right.
Because
But
every
but
every time
your
you learn something new, sorry
But
about
your
that.
your pivot, your pivot was 2 plus 2 equals 4. However, 3 plus 1 also equals 4, and one
Yes,
plus 3 equals 4, and 0 plus 4
yes,
equals 4. So really looking at that very basic equation, saying how can we still reach the means that we're trying to achieve with what
yes,
we have to work with, and that's really where, look, if you were a restaurant and you figured out how to create some sort of pickup type service during COVID. If
yeah,
you were, there were a lot of businesses that just could not do things differently and they had to figure out
right,
ways. And again, I think that was a really good test. But I
yeah,
also believe that it really had to do with, going into a situation like that, never imagining in their wildest dreams that this thing called COVID was going to knock us off our feet.
hmm,
But have a plan, to have a strong foundation, to have those values, to say, look, this is what we believe in. Now we just have to believe in it a
yeah,
different way.
yeah, yeah. I it's one of my favorite lessons that we've learned, and I always love an opportunity to talk about it. Um, Referencing back to COVID, we are an accounting firm, right? We show up, we do bookkeeping, we do financials, we do reporting, we talk strategically about where is your business at from a financial health standpoint. But we got leaned on heavily by our clients who did everything in person
Hmm.
to, well, you've been doing this virtually since the beginning, Shawndel. How do you do this? How
Right.
do we, how do we take a live event and make it virtual and successful? We
Hmm.
got to be a part of those conversations. And if I had just said, sorry, we only do accounting, man, what a
Right.
disservice that would have been to our clients, to, folks trying to figure it out, being able, them trying to pivot and figure it out. Um, Took a lot of grit and
Yeah.
tenacity from a lot of people. And
Yep.
I've always really appreciated that we were able to show up in that separate space. Now, did we make a whole line of revenue stream under that? Goodness, no, not
Right.
our lane. But in
Right.
that moment, we could support the lane to help guide and give ideas and brainstorm. And it was such a gift. So absolutely
And
love
I
that.
and to your point, I think one of the most valuable things that came out of it as well was you had an opportunity to be a provider of solutions during a time that
Mhm.
nobody had a roadmap for.
Right,
You probably could have very easily have said, look, we are numbers crunchers, and that is what we do, and we'll stay focused on that. And if that means we have to lay some people off or cut back our hours or whatever the case may be.
yeah,
But again, that ability to say, no, we aren't just that. We support businesses. And while
yeah,
this might be the area of strength for us, that doesn't mean that we can't dabble into other areas that are going to help them through a time that
right,
they didn't anticipate either.
right,
So what's really interesting is now that we are out of it, knock wood, and hopefully we'll never see it again. The question
right.
is what lessons were learned? Do we now look
Hmm.
back on those values and say that's why we were able to do what we did? Or did we either fail or falter and say it was because we didn't have clear, concise, secure values and we need to develop them now? And whether
Right.
that was coming out of that or whether it's because of a new evolution. And I mentioned very briefly AI and the role that it's playing in the workplace. I was talking to somebody just a couple of days ago, and I said, what's your number one core value as an organization? He goes, we are people first. We take care of our people,
Mhm.
we look for our people, we groom our people. I'm like, yeah, but we just spent the first 20 minutes of this conversation talking about how you're basically behind closed doors trying to figure out how to integrate AI into your organization with the idea of laying off somewhere between 5 and 7% of your staff.
Mm,
How do you rectify those two things? It's you can't be a people first organization when you're trying to figure out how to eliminate people. So is that
right.
truly a core value, or is it a core value that has to be reevaluated based on circumstances that have changed from the time that maybe you created it, in this case, almost 20 years ago?
Right. Right. Well, and that's it. I reference we're only 12 years old, right? Like
Hmm.
our first setup, we've reevaluated our core values. The basis of them is still solid, right? Like
Right,
that really hasn't changed, which was a good proving point.
right.
They really are our core values, right?
Yep,
They've morphed what their definition means, as we've grown, team size, clientele, whether it's the number of clientele or the type of clientele that we're working with, you know, they have to keep up with the growth of the business as well.
right.
And, some things that we tackle and focus on today, we didn't 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So I think I always think that sometimes people can get lost in the fact that, oh, my core values, they can't change because they're core. Otherwise, if they change,
Right,
we've changed the whole definition.
right.
And I think they evolve. I think evolve is the word that probably sits the best for me
I,
of,
yeah, they do. I mean, the analogy that I use very often is I refer to core values as that immutable DNA. And if
mm,
you think of us as human beings and our DNA, we can
mhm,
change the length of our hair. We can change the color of our hair. There are certain even cosmetic augmentations that we can make to our body, but there are just
right.
certain things about us that we cannot change. And the rest of our being revolves around those things. What kind of heart do
Mhm,
you have as a person? How do you think as an individual? Are you a creative thinker or are you a strategic thinker? And
right.
you might be able to learn new things and do things along the way, but you have a very defined DNA. And I believe, and I would make the argument that organizations, businesses, not-for-profits, whatever the case may be, they have that DNA, and then they can make the adjustments with that core still intact.
Mhm. Yeah, I think
And it
that's a
sounds
great
like
call out.
that sounds like what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was this is my fourth business, but my first one like this. The first one where I've actually had to sell. I when we decided to, after we got married, it was like, do we move? Do we start a family? Do we start a business? So we did all three in a year. It was really smart.
Get it out of the way
So
all at once. Why not?
Right. We literally moved into our house 2 days before my first son was born. So
Wow.
it was, yeah, it was a little bit of crazy town. But ultimately, I had had businesses prior to that, but, I sold new construction homes with, who somebody who was a realtor who was like, you need to go get your real estate license. You need to come sell homes with me. And I sold the model the first day I sat in the model, right? Like I didn't have to go anywhere and seek out sales for that.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
didn't have to go
Right.
out anywhere and seek out sales for the new construction cleaning business because weird, I cleaned for the same builder, right? Like when I did daycare, guess what? the- if a daycare person has to sell, there's a problem because there are so many people out there looking for daycare. So
Yeah.
like books were full pretty much all the time. So then I come to this business and I was like, whoa, yeah, it might be my fourth business, fourth rodeo technically, but not really because this is a whole new space of business. I knew the bookkeeping side, I knew the accounting, the small business from all of the jobs I had held, but being the CEO, getting used to that title, getting acclimated with it and owning it took me some time. And
Sure.
yeah, I'm grateful that I took the time to do it. But it CEO didn't roll off my tongue even 5 years ago as easily as it does today, right? Because
Right.
again,
Right.
evolving, learning, pivoting, all of these
Right.
things, they're
Yep.
constant.
Yep. And you set the tone as the CEO, as the
Yeah.
business owner. And look, I don't care if you're like a one man or a one woman band, or whether you've got 10 people working for you, 100 or 1,000. As the CEO or the leader of the department or the organization, you set the
Yeah.
tone. And you're in a very fortunate situation because you get to determine what the values of your organization are,
Yeah.
and how that translates into culture. So kudos for you. Now, I will tell you, just because you kind of touched on it, um, core value number one of the Red Apples Way is the R, and that stands for respect the universe. And that
Love it.
was the headiest, if you will, of the core values for me to become comfortable with. It's the one that's the most difficult to convey in the book, which is kind of why I acknowledge it early on, but hold it till the very end, to kind of
Okay.
share what it means. But when you think about some of the things that you just described in your previous businesses and how certain pieces sort of clicked into place, right?
Yeah.
So I would make the argument that that is recognizing and respecting the role that the universe is playing in the world that you're trying to create. And people refer to it different ways. Some it's a
Hmm.
very religious type of thing. Some it's karma, it's fate, it's coincidence. Some don't believe in it at all.
Yeah.
But I know one of the most valuable things for me in building Red Apples Media during the time that I was building it was when I finally kind of let go and realized that there are just some things that are out of my control. As hard as I was trying to control every moving piece in my world, personally and professionally, I wasn't doing a very good job of it. And it was really sort of building
Right.
that confidence and saying, there's certain things that are occurring, right? Certain clients that we weren't getting that I really wanted because I thought it'd be great for cash flow, only to find out these guys don't pay their bills or they just suck the life
Mm.
out of the organization. They're so
Yeah.
demanding. Or people that I wanted to hire that I thought this person's really going to help me turn this business around or take it to the next
Yeah.
level, and didn't work out for whatever reason. And you come to realize that it probably would not have been a good match. It looked good on paper. So, really kind of identifying when those planets are aligning, those stars are lining up, when the
Yeah.
universe is speaking to you, and sometimes we tune it out. We kind of know, we
It's
hear it,
costly.
but we don't want to listen to it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important part of, I think, a CEO, especially one that's very numbers driven. Somebody asked me this question recently. In media, we're very analytic driven. How do we know if
Mhm.
something is working or not, and how do you reconcile that with sort of having this faith in this bigger being? And I don't think the two cancel each other out. I think they all go together. So one does not have to replace the other.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think I I love your perspective on, not canceling each other out, being able to coincide and have that parallel, I think is really important. Control, you said control, and I might have to look up what control actually means in the dictionary.
My
Because
picture's probably next to it, or at least some of the earlier editions, because for sure I
right.
was I was a control freak.
Oh yeah. No, I now control freak and actual control, very different things,
Oh, for
right?
sure, for sure.
But that is some of the reality is
Right.
whether it's here in business or personal
Yep.
life or, pick whatever
Yep.
aspect you're trying to tackle. There are very few things we can control. And
Right.
um, like I
Well,
said,
and
that pivotal thing is it's real. It's really real. And I'm
yeah.
glad we got to talk about it today. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Real quickly, so like an example of
Yeah.
when I say control is, especially when you're running a business and I'm sure experienced this early on and anybody who's building a business,
Mm,
your focus initially is on cash flow, landing
mm,
clients, getting revenue, moving money through the organization so you can pay people, you can grow it, you can market it, whatever your use of the money's going to be. And so I had this natural inclination to think that I had to sell what I was doing. And
mm,
I realized very early on that I suck at sales. I was
mm,
really bad at it because there were times where I felt like I was trying to um, close a deal that maybe in my gut I knew was not necessarily in the best interest either for me or for them. But I saw
mhm.
dollar signs and I thought, I've got to add three more clients this month. I've got to add X number of dollars more to the bottom line.
Yep.
And realized that that was a horrible approach. And I really needed to
Yeah.
kind of take a step back and realize that while I sucked at sales, I was much better at relationships. And a
Hmm.
relationship by definition, I know it's a very cliche thing to say, but to recognize that relationships have to be two ways, right? So
Yeah.
I want to be able to gain something, but I also want to be able to deliver value to that potential client. And that's a big part of what made Red Apple so successful. And as you go through those nine core values, they touch on relationships, they touch on value, they touch on people, and really how all those things really made a difference for us. And what's really cool for me is that I've had a lot of people who have read the book say, I didn't know if I was supposed to follow the nine values for my company, but I very clearly say it's just there to sort of lay the groundwork to help you start to think differently about the role that core values play in your organization. And I use the phrase adapt or adopt or ignore for all I care. At
Right.
that point, it's a matter of did something resonate with you? Did something,
Right.
did a new light bulb go off that you went, maybe I do need to think about, are we really a people first organization while we're trying to replace part of our people with
Right.
technology? We have to rethink that. Doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you a bad CEO, doesn't make you a
Right.
bad business owner. To your point, we're constantly evolving these values.
Well, and maybe that people first, maybe that can stick. And of course, you and I are not going to solve this problem for this owner, but you know, but maybe that people first can stick. But what's the rename?
Right,
What's the new description of it?
right.
Does it need to incorporate the use of AI so that our people can benefit XYZ?
Yep,
That's okay too.
yep.
So
And we came
yeah,
out of that conversation with three very specific action items that would allow them to continue to be people first in an age of
awesome.
AI in a way that had not been thought about. Because somebody had
Right.
to just sort of, sometimes we get so busy, you've heard this expression, working on the business and in the business that we
Yes.
forget about to take a step back and get a broader view. And
Right.
that was the role that I was fortunate to be invited to play was to say, look at our organization. This is what we're wrestling with. What are you seeing that we don't see because we see it every single day?
Right.
And it's funny because, I'm sure there are times talking to you, I bet you throw out acronyms and you throw out formulas and because you speak a language on a daily basis,
Hmm.
sometimes forgetting that the people who are listening to you have no idea, what a P&L is. What does P&L stand for? It took me years to figure out what
Right.
the P and the L stood for. Um,
Right.
and when I found out that the P was not peanut butter, I was blown away. That was just very
And
disturbing and
disappointed.
unsettling for me. Exactly.
You
Um,
know what? You're 100% right. I threw out COA the other day and they were like, "What's COA?" I was like,
yep.
"Oh, I'm sorry. Your chart of accounts. That's what we need to update." And they were like, "Oh, okay." But
Yeah, when I
yeah.
when when I eventually sold Red Apple's media, some of the questions that I was being asked, like, what's your EBITDA? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Am I close? Did I get it right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And I'm like, well, I don't know, but I'm due to go see my general practitioner next week, and I can probably get an answer to that question because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right,
Um,
right.
but and look, we do it too. We assume people know what SEO is, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And so we have to, what is B-roll exactly? So we have to explain those things. We have to
Hmm.
speak to them in terms. And my point being is sometimes we need somebody to stop us from the machine that we run on a regular basis to say,
Yes.
it's time to take a step back. Let's take a broader view. Let's reevaluate. How do we address being a people-first organization in an AI world in such a way that does not compromise that DNA of us, but allows us to reevaluate how it would apply to today's environment.
Right. Well, Marc, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate you diving into these topics and spaces with me today.
Thank you.
Um, how would our audience get in touch with you, get their hands on your book? What would be the best way for them to do so?
The book, The Red Apple's Way, is available on pretty much all the major platforms, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, paperback, and e-edition. You can also go check out theredapplesway.com. Apples is plural. And there's links there. There's contact information if you want to get in touch. Love speaking at conferences and events, consulting and coaching and working with organizations to help them avoid some of the pitfalls that I've already figured out. And we'll keep you out of those holes if we possibly can.
That sounds amazing. And we will, of course, have the links here in the show notes as well. Thank you. I'm grateful you took the time today to come and join us. And I look forward to getting your episode live so everybody can benefit from it.
You're awesome. I appreciate your time as well, Shawndel.
Likewise. Thanks, Marc. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us for the CEO Shift. If today's conversations challenged your thinking or helped you see your business differently, it's time to put what you learned into action. If you want practical guidance on making better CEO-level decisions, download the CEO Decision Guide now. This framework is what leaders use to stop spinning their wheels and start scaling with clarity. Download your free copy at spadergroup.com/CEO-guide and start making decisions like a CEO today. We'll see you next time on the CEO Shift.